Thomas Clark Adams was born on June 13, 1903 in Taylorsville, North Carolina. His birthplace was a two-room log cabin located on the Adams family farm. As a baby, Clark was held by his great-uncles who had fought in the Civil War. These same great-uncles, in turn, when they were babies, were held by their grandfather, Captain James Adams, who had served under George Washington in the Revolutionary War. Clark's father was a tobacco farmer who also grew lots of vegetables for the family to eat. His mother was a homemaker, and unusual to those times of male social domination, was boss of the manor. Clark's parents did not have very much formal education. However, they functioned as productive citizens, were economically successful in a geographic region that had been devastated by the Civil War, helped by their neighbors, and were positive and loving influences on their 8 children's lives. As a young boy, Clark went to school 4 months each year during the winter months. Each school day, Clark walked 5 miles to school. He had to cross creeks, jump ravines, and traverse fields on the way to school. But school for Clark did not last very long. When Clark was in the 7th grade, he quit school. This was because his dad had bought an automobile, and Clark decided he wanted to be his dad's chauffeur. The year Clark was born had its importance in America and world history. For example, in December of 1903, the Wright brothers conducted their first motorized flight. Consequently, when Clark was born, man had yet to fly. Clark's life paralleled great strides in aviation history, from Kitty Hawk to a Mars mission. Also, a little-known race driver in Dearborn, Michigan, Henry Ford, organized his first company, the Ford Motor Company. This would have an impact on Clark's life as the Ford Company new paradigm of producing an affordable automobile for the common man brought the automobile to western North Carolina. Finally, the United States began entering the age of progressive growth, research, and technology. The world changed the agrarian America Clark was born into to a manufacturing country that Clark would grow up with. The emerging technology and research explosion within the country deeply affected the adolescent Clark. Clark's family had always been farmers. However, Clark was looking for something different, something conducive to his high cognitive aptitude for mechanical knowledge. As a young man, one day Clark was talking to his friend Pinckney Mayberry about their economic opportunities. Pinckney stated his economic opportunity was in Montana, where the U.S. government would give you a square mile of land if you would try to make the land productive. Clark took his bag of tools, threw them on the floor, and told Pinckney, "This is how I'm going to earn my living. This is what I want to do." In 1924, Clark traveled to Florida on his 1924 Model T Ford to spend the winter. The entire trip was on dirt roads because there were no paved roads in the southeastern United States at that time, except in towns. It took 3 days, lots of flat tires, and many breakdowns to complete the trip. The next winter, Clark again traveled to Florida on his new 1925 Model T Ford. He said that year it took more gas to fill his tank, and it ain't never changed. That summer, Clark moved to Salisbury, where he worked as an automobile mechanic and played YMCA basketball. It was said that he could make the other players mad by holding the ball above their head, knowing they could not jump high enough to grab the ball. As an older man, it is difficult to imagine Clark's physical strength when he was younger. As a young man, he could put 200-pound sacks of grain on each shoulder and carry them around his farm. He has been known to lift cars, hit mules, and cut trees with an axe and a crosscut saw. He used to plow behind the mule and earned $1 a day. Of course, this work had no hours. Clark began work when the sun came up and worked till the sun went down. In 1926, Clark met a lovely dark-haired girl, Virginia Ruby Fink. She was a school teacher and liked to talk and sing, play the piano, and dreamed of having a family. They were a perfect match. The gregarious talking girl and the strong silent type, Clark. They were married in 1927 in Faith, North Carolina, and honeymooned in Niagara Falls. From 1928 through 1932, Clark thought his mission in life was to procreate children. During this 4-year period of time, Clark and Ruby had 3 beautiful children, Rosalie Thomasine Adams, Perry Franklin Adams, and Gerald Clark Adams. In retrospect, it is difficult to imagine the dichotomy of feelings Clark experienced in 1932. He had a beautiful wife, 3 lovely children, new house, and was earning his living doing what he wanted to do. On the other hand, the nation was in an economic depression. The sale of automobiles had faltered, and millions of people were out of work. At this point in his life, Clark was 29 years old, had a 7th grade education, and 4 dependent people relying on him for economic, social, and emotional support. But as Clark was strong physically, he was also mentally disciplined. and he supported his family in the hard and difficult 1930s. Being an automobile mechanic, Clark had to learn new technology each year. Today, we talk about the technology explosion. But when Clark worked as an automobile mechanic, each year he had to learn the workings of an automobile, which had evolved from a simple, almost tractor-like device to modern, specialized automobiles. Clark had to accrue this new knowledge from reading company literature in the evening hours, when baby Gerald was screaming for his dessert. During World War II, Clark remained an automobile mechanic at Foyle Motor Company, the Salisbury, North Carolina Chrysler dealership. Clark had an important role during World War II as a mechanic. During the war, most mechanics had to leave for military service, and because the automobile plants were changing from automobile to wartime production, no automobiles were produced for almost 5 years. It was the job of automobile mechanics to keep cars running with whatever parts they could muster. For example, during the war years on Clark's own car, he had 2 tires tied together, a rebuilt carburetor, a record radiator, and was only allowed 5 gallons of gasoline per week. Because of the important role they played in World War II, Chrysler Corporation actually released a formal statement thanking the automobile mechanics who kept America's cars running during a period when there were no new parts, no new cars, and a shortage of trained mechanics. Clark's 5th decade, he both gained and lost. At home, Clark's children, the Depression and War-era children of the 30s and 40s, were old enough to leave home and take care of themselves. Clark sent a son to Korea and then to the business world. He saw a daughter graduate from college with a business degree, return to college and receive an education and counseling degree, and he had another son graduate from college with an education degree and move to another state. He gained 2 daughters-in-law and 3 grandchildren. His physical strength began to slightly diminish as his knees began to bother him from years of walking on concrete floors. He drove the same car for the next 20 years, wore his green overalls and the matching hat, and worked until he was 72. When Clark was 73, his lovely wife, companion, and mother of his children died from heart complications after 49 years of marriage. After so many years of responsibility to his brother and sisters in Taylorsville, to his wife and children in Salisbury, to his job as an automobile mechanic, Clark was now alone. For several years, Clark lived in his house he had built in 1927. After an automobile accident and subsequent surgeries, Clark moved to Autumn Care Nursing Home, and this became his home. Again, Clark assumed responsibilities. He delivered newspapers, helped his neighbors, told the electricians, plumbers, and heating and air conditioning people how to fix the problem, and maintained his wonderful personality and disposition. We will always love and remember him. Thomas Clark Adams.